What's up, you guys? Patrick here, and today's video is the second video in a two-part series where we are going over the Meet Kevin's highlighted version of the stimulus bill so we can figure out how we can get some of that free money from the government. So in yesterday's video, we went from page 1 to 50, went over everything that's in there, and today, part 2, we're finishing up the rest of the document from page 50 to 73 or 80, something like that. And we're gonna go through it and help you get that money. But if you're following along, we are on page 50, line 1. It says, documentation verifying the number of full-time equivalent employees on payroll and pay rates for the periods described in subsection D, including blah, blah, blah. So that's where we're at. And we're going to scroll down and keep going through Meet Kevin's highlights, as well as some of the other stuff that I identified that I also think is important for other small business owners to know. But we're just going to keep going through it and do the last 20 or so pages. All right, so if you scroll down and we're on page 51, line 1, which says prohibition on forgiveness without documentation. So remember how I said yesterday in part 1 of this video where the covered period for this loan, as far as the once you actually get approved for the loan is concerned, is the 8-week period after the loan begins. And what this line 1 on page 51 says is, you recall how after the covered period, you're going to have to apply for forgiveness in order to get that money to actually be forgiven from the government. Well, this just basically says that you're not going to be allowed to get forgiveness unless you submit all the requisite and required documents. So it goes on from there and then says they have to make a decision on that. The bank, the lender, the underwriter of the loan has to make a decision within 60 days. After you file for forgiveness, they have to make a decision on that forgiveness of how much is going to be forgiven. And then subsection H just says that the lender has received the documentation and that we have accurately put together and given them all the documents, then the government can't really do anything against the lender. So the government can't attack the banks, so the government can't punish or penalize the banks. Doesn't really interest us too much. And then subsection I, which is line 5 on page 52, says taxability. So any amount of the forgiveness any amount of the loan that you got forgiven is not to be included as gross revenue or gross income, so it will not be taxed. It's like, so that takes care of tax. And then scroll down, we're on section 1107, line 17 of page 52 as well. Just lays out the amounts that they're actually going to be giving away for the Paycheck Protection Program. Keep scrolling down, and then a very important note is we get to page 54, and we're on line 3, and this is what Kevin was talking about in one of his videos recently, is that on line 3 and on line 7, it actually spells out how you go about getting the $10,000 grant money from applying for an EIDL. Later on page, I think it's like 57 or 59, we'll be going over the actual stipulations for that, but this just lays out the amount of the grants and the loans that are going to be going through the Paycheck Protection Program and the EIDL SBA loans. So keep scrolling down. All right, so that covers page 54, page 55, keep scrolling. Education, training, and advising grants. And keep scrolling, so we're on page 56. The rest of the stuff on the next couple of pages doesn't matter too much. It just goes over like compliance for agencies, reporting metrics, stuff like that, that has to deal more with the banks and the lenders than it does with the actual businesses that are going to be applying for the loan. So if we scroll down to the next important section, we get to page 66. All right, so go ahead, take the time to scroll down to page 66 because this is where they lay out all of the terms and conditions, at least as far as the stimulus bill is concerned, for the economic injury disaster grants and economic injury disaster loans. And this is very, very key because these are being given out by the government and the SBA on a first come, first served basis. So if you haven't seen Meet Kevin's other videos on these, definitely check them out. He goes over the loan application process, and you should definitely do that as soon as possible because once that money is gone, it's gone. So let's go ahead and go over section 1110 on line 15 of page 66. Now in this section, they again lay out the definitions like covered period, eligible entity, just says it's the same type of people that can apply for the PPP SBA loan. So there's not really anything different there other than what Kevin has highlighted under subsection D, which is an ESOP or a tribal small business concern. I'm not really sure what either of those are. but they probably don't pertain to most of you. So goes over the eligible entities. They waive the fact that you have to say, or that you have to put forth a statement that says you are unable to get credit elsewhere. They're actually waiving that, so you don't have to worry about that. They are waiving the requirement as well that an applicant needs to be in business for a whole 1 year period before the disaster. But this does not apply for any business that was started after January 31st of 2020. You have to have been in business before January 31st of 2020. And then if we keep scrolling down, we're on page 68, and Kevin's next highlight is from line 13 to 16, which says that the loans will be approved solely on the credit score of the applicant, and they will not require you to submit a 2019 or 2018 tax return or tax return transcript in order to get approval for this loan. Now, this is different than the personal section of the stimulus package, where each person can get up to $1,200 based on their tax filings from 2018 and 2019. This basically says that if you're going to fill out the Paycheck Protection Program SBA loan or the EIDL SBA loan, then you do not have to submit a tax return for 2019 or 2018. Now, if we get down to page 69 on line 4, then it says, if you apply for the grant and when you're going through the application, you click that little check mark that says, I would like to request an advance of up to $10,000 that would be treated as a grant, then that would have to be, once they receive that application, that would be deposited into your account within 3 days. It does not say 3 business days. So apparently the weekend is included in that, but I expect that to be a little bit flexible because there's a lot of people applying for this. Now, if we keep scrolling down to his next highlighted section, on subsection 3 of page 69, that says the amount of the advance provided under this subsection shall not be more than $10,000. So that basically means you can apply for an advance of up to $10,000, but you will not be getting an advance of more than that. So there's no way that more than that will be considered a grant. Now we get to the use of funds as well, which is a very important section, which just says an advance provided under the subsection may be used to address any allowable purpose for the loan made under the section, et cetera, et cetera. So this is what you're allowed to use that grant/loan money for, all right? And that is A, providing paid sick leave to employees, B, maintaining payroll, 3, meeting increased costs to obtain materials unavailable from our original source due to interrupted supply chains. So say if you have a remodeling business and you were going to have materials delivered, but they got delayed due to some issue in the supply chain that was due to COVID-19, then you would be able to, and you had to buy the materials from some other place, then you could pay that spread with the grant money. And then the 4th is making rent or mortgage payments. I'm assuming that this is still following the corollary that the lease had to be under effect before February 15th of this year, but it does not state that directly in this section of the stimulus bill. And then the 5th section says repaying obligations that cannot be met due to revenue losses. This is very vague, so be careful with this one, but I'm not exactly sure what we can and cannot do under that section. And this is the most important part, all right? This next highlighted section, repayment. An applicant shall not be required. Okay, this is the most important section, guys. All right, so we are still on page 70, and we're on line 11 that says the following. Repayment. An applicant shall not be required to repay any amounts of an advance provided under this subsection, even if subsequently denied a loan for the EIDL disaster loan. That basically says it's a grant. If you get it, you don't have to pay it back. Just make sure that you do use it for the 5 things that they laid out that you're going to be able to use it for. So make sure that you do that. But it says, this basically just says, without a catch, if you apply for the SBA EIDL loan and you get a grant or you get the advance put into your bank account, you do not have to pay that back under any circumstances. No catch whatsoever. This is the crazy part, right? And then subsection 6, which starts on line 16, says that if the applicant receives this advance under the EIDL and then is transferred into the paycheck, I had it written up on the whiteboard, so I keep pointing, but if you apply for the EIDL SBA loan and you get the grant, and then later on you also apply for the PPP SBA loan, you're going to be allowed to do that, but the amount of the grant will be taken out of the forgiveness amount from the Paycheck Protection Program loan that you do get. So if you get, say you get $10,000 for the grant, and then you later on apply for the PPP loan for 20 grand and you get it, the $10,000 grant is going to be taken out of the 20,000 that could be forgivable from the PPP loan. Okay, so now we're scrolling down to page 71. The next thing that he has highlighted just says you can't get this after December 31st. And then keep scrolling down to page 73 and it goes on to the next section, 1111, resources and services in languages other than English. This is the last page or two of this, and Kevin's got something highlighted after that. It's the sense of Congress that all borrowers are adversely affected by this. This just means don't apply for this loan if your business is not affected by this, but every business in America is pretty much going to be affected by this in some way or another, in a negative way. So that doesn't, okay, great. So those are the last pages that Kevin has gone over in his little snippet that he's cut out of the stimulus bill. The actual stimulus bill is 880 or so pages, but if we go to, so he cuts out at page 73 or 74, and if you open up the full thing, the full Final CARES Act, the 880 page version, which I will link in the description as well, so you can read through that if you're interested. Can't imagine why, but maybe you just really want to. But anyway, if you look at the pages that are still from this title that goes over the SBA loans for small businesses that Kevin did not include, which are pages like 74 or 75 to where it ends on page 83, none of those really have to do with any of the things that we've talked about. It's just goes over really stuff that doesn't really matter. So I can see why he didn't really include it. But if you get to page 84, then that's where it starts Title II, Assistance for American Workers, Families, and Business, and goes over the unemployment stuff. So basically the only things that matter for people who are applying for this loan are the first 83 pages, and we just went over all of that and how that applies to you. So if you have any questions about this, go ahead and ask me. Remember, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a contractor that has a couple of small businesses who has to read through contracts on a daily basis and write my own. So we just went through all of the first 84 pages and what it means for you guys and how you can apply for it and the different terms and conditions laid out in the stimulus bill. So if you're interested in getting the PPP SBA loan, make sure that you talk to your banker about that, because they're the only ones that are going to be authorized to make that loan. And if you're interested in the EIDL SBA loan, make sure you go to the link in the description below, non-affiliate anything, it's just the SBA.gov link for it, where you can apply for the EIDL loan/grant. So hope this has been useful for you guys. And if you found it useful or helpful, please remember to like and subscribe for more content like this, and that's it. So hopefully you guys can get some of that sweet free government money. So this has been part 2, and thanks guys, talk to you soon.